Do you believe in accountable love?
Welcome to Accountable Love, home of the LoveSnobs, where love is a group journey. My name is Jerry.
My name's Aziz.
And today we're going to talk about how our standards should apply to all of our relationships.
Home of the Love Snobs, Love Snobs, Love Snobs. The Love Snobs have surfaced. You know, the people that actually use honesty to communicate. The genuine friends that refuse to let you feel sorry for yourself. Yes, those people.
You know, the friends that collect your tears every time life makes your eyes rain. The love snobs, the people that don't allow you to settle. Support your dreams, but don't support you sleeping with just anybody.
You know, the friends that are so judgmental they ask you to stay away from negative people and encourage you to surround yourself with positive people.
Yes, that friend. The friends that love you even when you refuse to love yourself.
You know, the love snobs.
So the other day, not even, we didn't have a conversation, but we decided to do this topic because I was watching television and I was watching a show where it's a group of friends, and within the friendships, people had their own, I hate to say their own because every relationship, love is a group journey, so everyone is connected. But in this case, they had friends and their significant others were separate because they didn't get along with the friends. And I noticed that a lot of the relationships with the friends were different from their romantic relationships because the standards were different. So things that they will hold their friends accountable for, they were not holding their partners for. And I was telling Aziz, I was like, that's funny how when it comes to friendship, people don't really think it's necessary to hold their friends accountable for certain things. But boyfriend or girlfriend could get away with all types of stuff because they truly want the relationship to work. And I'm not saying that people don't want their friendships to work, but I do think that we are taught to believe that romantic relationships, that's more of an accomplishment than our friendships. So we can get with somebody, get married, have kids, and do all that stuff, then we are actually successful. No one says, wow, you're successful because you have five really good friends. And I think that that's why the standards don't transfer over.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great point.
So it just made me realize that we don't talk about that enough. B, we're not really holding our friends accountable because your standards should apply to all your relationships, not just the people that you're romantic with. If you believe in one thing overall, then your boyfriend shouldn't be able to get away with it, your girlfriend shouldn't be able to get away with it, and your friends shouldn't be able to get away with it. But sometimes we have these soft spots, and I would even take it down to children, right? Some parents allow their children to get away with all types of stuff that they wouldn't allow anybody else to get away with because they're their child and for whatever reason.
I would think it's
I thought it would be,
I would think they allow grown-ups to get away with things that they wouldn't allow their children to get away with. So we tend to hold.
I see it on both ends. Like we wouldn't.
I mean, but the routine is, we're a lot harder on our kids because they're the strongest representation of us. So we expect them 15 people developing 15, 12-year-olds to be more accountable than adults because, quote unquote, adults have their own lives, adults have their own minds, adults, we don't see them as connected to us as our children. And I think it's more of who's more expendable, right? Wouldn't you say? Like if there's a friend that's less expendable than a partner, we tend to let that friend get away with, we tend to let that partner get away with more than that friend. But if that friend is less expendable than a partner, we tend to allow the partner to get away with, the friend to get away with all kinds of stuff and don't allow the partner to get away with things.
But is it being expendable, or do you think, or is it because we were taught to believe that when it comes to romantic partners, like we have a longer set goal with that person, so the friend is not gonna like. I guess it's expendable, but the friend should understand why I may be a little bit more lenient in this area than I am with the friendship, because we're actually building a life together forever. We're gonna have kids, and it's a different type of love. Like everyone says, like it's a different type of love when you're dealing romantically, as opposed to
whatever standards are set, regardless of whether they're set or not set, the standards are based on the agreements between the relationship. So if two people agree that they're more important than their friends, then that's how it's going to be conducted. So whether it's a traditional value or a traditional belief, they're still applying it to their romantic partners. They're still applying it to their friends. So the question would be, what are your standards in general?
Yeah.
Because if your belief systems are in place where our kids are more important, our spouse is more important, yeah, then we tend to either let our friend get away with anything because we don't feel like they have that much of an impact on our life, or we don't let them get away with anything for the same reason. We don't feel that they don't have that much of an impact on our life. So we're a little harder on them because they have to prove to us that they can still be in our lives. So either way, I mean, the standards what we're talking about today is the standards should transfer. They should transfer across the board.
Absolutely, because the thing is so when you partner, like if you have standards for one person, but not every person that's in your life, right? And you pardon the other people for whatever reason, you may think that it's not that serious, or they, like you said, they're not that impactful in your life, but you're still in a relationship with them. The person, even though you're not holding the other person to the same standard, they're still looking at you like you're full of shit, even though they're not saying it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's something that people also don't talk about. Like, it's one thing, like, I could look at it and say, you know what, Aziz lets me get away with murder, right? I could say that, right?
Definitely.
And just say that, but if you allow me to get away with it, but you're dating somebody and she's like, damn, like, Jerry could do no wrong. Like, she's having thoughts and opinions about how it doesn't transfer over, right? So she's looking at you different. She's thinking like, what's the, like, as she's questioning our relationship, because she's not thinking, hey, Jerry doesn't mean as much to you as I do, that's why you don't care. She's looking at like, Jerry's still a part of your life, she's still part of your, your circle, so why doesn't it transfer over?
She's looking at me as a hypocrite.
A hypocrite, yeah.
Which should be questioned. It should definitely be questioned. Now, we do have to be clear, like, based on track record, some people have more equity. So when they do stuff, you're not as hard on them because they do have equity. They do have a great track record. So you address it, but it's not to the extreme if it's somebody that's constantly doing it and you're at your wit's end. So you're at that place where, they're on thin ice. So there's a difference, but you should be able to articulate that. And you should be able to explain it. But when it comes to the standard, it should get addressed across the board.
Agreed.
So what we're talking about is when somebody is not necessarily addressing something, and you always got to hear from your partner, or you're always telling your friend what your partner did, but not addressing it with them. And then that's where they see the hypocrisy of, oh, why isn't it transferring over? Why do you believe in transparency with us, but you're not being transparent with your partner?
Yeah.
Why do you believe in it's okay to be, to be honest, and you want somebody that has integrity, but yet you got a side piece, or you got a boo on the side. You know what I mean? Like, you are being looked at and you are being watched, and you should be, because your greatest allies should be your greatest critics. Mm-hmm. So they should, make sure they should allow you to look in the mirror and see who you are. So yeah, your standards should definitely transfer over. And I think that's where the discussion, and whether you're in relationships already or you're starting new relationships, you should just take a step back if you're in the relationships already and start talking about what are our standards and do they align? And if you're starting a new one, I think it's very important to have the discussion about what your standards are, because they should definitely transfer over. Your standards are what make you who you are.
Yeah, not just your standards should transfer over, but I think it's important to talk about, have a person break down too exactly like what their standards are within a romantic situation and how that applies to everything around them as well. Because it all sounds good. Like, I've been in many situations that I'm thinking I'm really connecting with somebody because we're saying all the same things, but we're not saying the same things. Mm-hmm. It's not until you get the full breakdown that you realize, or you kind of hit that roadblock, that you realize that you were never saying the same thing to begin with, although you were saying the same thing. So I think it's important to really take the time to like break it down and understand what those standards mean, and give examples of it. And not just like cookie cutter examples of shit that you see on TV. You know, I'm not saying that what you see on TV is not real, but like real life examples. And like, I would give an example now, you know, I'm like storyteller Jerry. One thing I had an issue with was, you know, we could talk about the relationship with, you know, my brother, and I had a standard that I believe that no one should talk to me in a way of like disrespectfully, right? That's a standard across the board. So when a family member did it, right, and I put my foot down and said, I'm not dealing with this because I wouldn't allow anybody else to deal with it, my family thought I was crazy because they thought that, well, he's still, you know, he's still your brother. Like, you should be able to, like, you should still accept it because he's never going to really harm you, right? But I would never allow anybody else to speak to me in that way. He wouldn't allow anybody to speak to me that way, right? So I think that you need to have that conversation with your family members as well. Like, when we get to a certain age and we're establishing and we break away from, and we, now I wouldn't say break away from family, but when we are coming to our own and realizing that maybe some of the things that you were taught growing up is not what you believe, what you stand by, what you wanna continue with, and you're creating your own standards, and you may take some that you learned growing up, but you want to create, so you want to add some new ones and take away some old ones. That I think that you need to also have that conversation too with those people as well, because what happens is they think that, you know, because you have that connection that it doesn't apply when it should apply.
Definitely.
The same, like I say with even with my daughter, like if I do something to her that she believes is disrespectful, or I like disrespectful, or if I did something wrong, she should be able to address that, and I should be able to have the conversation with her. Like, just because I'm her mother doesn't mean that she doesn't have a right to believe that I disrespected her, or I disregarded her, or she felt some way about how I was dealing with her. She should be able to have that. She should be, if she's creating standards for herself as well, she should be able to address that.
Definitely.
So I think it's important to.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I just think it's important to, it's just not limited to, you know, friends and significant others. I think when it comes to family, those are the hardest places to kind of insert your standards, because I know personally, when I was at a time, when I was around my family, I went back to being 10 years old each time, you know. So whatever the adult Jerry, that was who I was, the mom, whatever. But then when I went back home, I was back to being young Jerry. And so, of course, my standards were not present then, because I went back to, you know, how things were before. And we sometimes go into that routine of doing that, and it's really important that we bring that up, because with family, a lot of people believe that standards don't, the standards that you may have created for yourself outside of what you learned at home doesn't really matter.
I think that's a great example of what we mean when we say standards, because as a young person, you go home and, you know, you go into a household where there's no respect for your standards.
Yeah.
You start to shrink, and then you start to become that 10-year-old. But if you hold your parents accountable, there's consequences that you probably can't endure at the time. So that's where a lot of people are in a fearful place, because they are in relationships that they feel like they can't lose, or they feel like, you know, they really, you know, like this person has so much that that has so much that they believe that they're so ingrained in their life that they can't live without that person, that they forfeit their standards and they lose track of their standards. You get what I'm saying? So I think that the adult child dynamic is great, because it's important that we give our children a voice. You know, like when talking to Camille, which is, you know, Jerry's daughter, my goddaughter, we just had a discussion about my body, my choice.
We sure
right?
did.
And that, I think that's big to, that's a discussion where she just wanted to have the discussion and make that statement. We had to explain to her, like, that statement comes with a set of responsibilities and comes with a standard. Like, you have to have a standard when you're saying your body, your choice. You have to recognize who you are. You got to recognize what's your standards when involving your body. So don't make that statement until you're ready to have the full discussion. Don't make that statement until you really truly understand what that means and you can really articulate what that means for you, because you need to have those things before the choices of the body comes in. You need to have those standards before you have to make those decisions, before you're kissing, before you're hugging, before you're filling up each other. You have to have those standards before you're meeting up with the person. You have to know what it is, what you're getting into before you get into it. So it's very important to, you know, have those discussions with our children. But now we're not even having those discussions with our friends. You know, we're letting our friends run around, and because they're hurt and wounded, and because they're, you know, they're not at the best that they can be, they're running around having random sex or meeting random guys, and they're calling it just dating, or I'm just having fun, or I'm just doing me. But really, you're destroying your integrity. You're destroying your standards. You're breaking down what you once had. And now, no matter how we dress it up, we are looking at them in a different light. And we are changing how we view them if they were upstanding people from the beginning. You know what I'm saying? So it's very important to have standards, because that's how people recognize you. You have 5 friends talking about you. You want 5 friends that have similar stories. They might have different stories, but they'll have similar attributes you have, similar standards you have. They all know, oh, she don't play with this, or he don't play with this, or yeah, he'll probably let you get away with this for a little while, but you know, there's gonna be but so much he's gonna allow. Like, that's the standard. That's who you are. That's truly who you are.
Well, yeah, and that's gonna, like we explained to Camille, like when you have those things in place, then it helps you decide what decisions you want to make going forward, right? Like when am I pumping the brakes? When am I going forward? When am I, you know what I mean? Like you can go into situations without those things. I mean, and the outcome wasn't favorable. And at the time they were. That's another thing, you know, that I explained to her. And I know this is not about accountable parenting, but again, everything connects, everything correlates, you know, everything. Yeah, it's all basically the same thing, but taught in different ways. And I basically said, you know, to her that, you know, the thing is, like, when you just go into a situation and just allow your feelings to dictate how far you're going to go, then you put yourself in a dangerous situation. And not like danger per se where you're going to get hurt, but danger in a sense that you're moving forward in a situation without any type of boundaries, without that conversation. And that leads to other things. And anytime that I've ever done that, because let's be honest, you know, when you are feeling somebody and you are in an intimate setting, it feels good. So what's going to stop you from taking it to the next level? Because you're already feeling, you know, you already have that feeling. So what's going to help you say, you know what, what's going to put you in the state of mind and say, you know what, I'm not prepared for this. I don't want to take it there. Or let my feelings just take me wherever I need to go. Because anytime I let my feelings take me wherever I needed to go, it just never wasn't a place that I felt good in the moment, but over time you don't feel good about yourself. It chips away at your self-worth. Yeah. And I think that that's really important to understand too. Like when it comes to standards, like anybody that can articulate their standards very easily and they know what they want, they are known to be like militant or disciplined, yeah. Or you don't know how to have fun, or you know, you're a buzzkill, or you're a square.
Kick back.
Yeah, and I used to be those people. Like I kind of was in the middle of, you know, I wasn't totally buck wild, but I wasn't totally I wasn't regimented either. You know what I mean? And I think that because I found some place in the middle because I wanted the best of both worlds. But through experience, the best of both worlds didn't really get me to the places that I really needed to be. I took the scenic route to get to where I'm at. You know what I mean? You don't have to take the scenic route. And yes, things may be fun in the moment. Things may be fun at the time. Things may feel good, but are we living for the moment, or are we living for the future? Are we building stuff for longevity, or are we just thinking of the here and now? Because that's what we really need to think about, especially when we get to certain age. We're trying to teach our 14-year-old daughter that now, and she's just like, okay, whatever. Like it's just way too much for her at this point. But my parents didn't sit down and tell me that. My parents didn't have that conversation with me about, you know, self-worth and standards and boundaries. It was just like, you know, you're having sex, don't get pregnant. Mm-hmm. That was the end of that. You know what I mean? Like that's all. And finish school. It's like, don't get pregnant, finish school, and that was it. So and get a job. Yeah, get a job.
Yeah. But
and
I mean that, and really we're off topic. We're talking about people that like a daughter that we are raising because we assume the responsibility of it, and we're talking about a person that's going to evolve and get their own friends in their own life, and may decide that they really don't want to be in our life on a regular basis, and that's definitely a choice they can make.
yeah,
But we're also talking about families and how our parents, and obviously we get what we get because we're born into it without our consent, and we got to make decisions based on the fly because of that. But
yeah,
the relationships we're talking about is relationships we choose. You know what I mean? Like, why do we choose to be with people that even put us in a position to forfeit our standards? Like, we always talk and we always have discussions, and the first thing I always bring up is, don't make me choose my standards or you, because it's always going to be my standards. You know what I mean? And the fact that I like that you brought up that everybody looks at that person as militant and closed-minded and regimented. And yeah, first off, what's wrong with being regimented? What's wrong with having
yeah,
plans? What's
nothing.
wrong with having structure? But there's so much outside of those set standards that you could accomplish and you can enjoy. Like, nobody has a standard like, I'm just like, unless you a monk and you're actually sitting in a monastery and just in one place and meditating, you have so many likes and so many things you enjoy and so many things you want to do and so many things that really are gonna fulfill another person's life, that you have to really look at. If somebody's saying that about you, you got to reflect on, am I in the right place? If you're saying that about somebody, you got to reflect on, are you in the right place? Because that person's standard and forfeiting that person's standards you shouldn't take joy in them forfeiting their standards. You're supposed to be their backup plan. You're supposed to be their protection. So when they are forfeiting their standards, you're supposed to be the second line of defense or the last line of defense to be like, listen, you forfeiting your standards. We don't recognize you. You got to hold them accountable. And if you can't hold them accountable and you're like, okay, this is benefiting me, so forfeit your standards, are you truly being a friend? Are you truly being a spouse? So these are the questions we truly need to ask each other.
Yeah, agreed. Like, if you really want to be the best version of yourself, but your friends are not in on your standards, or they are but they don't really want to hold you to that, then that's an issue. If you gotta sometimes, you gotta call out yourself to your friends. Like,
Definitely.
it's like you're holding yourself accountable to your friends. Like, I didn't really do.
You too much. You're the adult in the room, and you need to
Yeah,
find other adults to hang out with.
I mean, that's happened where you like, I need to take a step back because I did blah 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 blah, and I haven't really been doing it. And they're like, oh yeah, I can see that. And it's like, but I'm sure if you paid attention, you would have saw it. You know what I mean? And you should have been.
Or you're talking bad about a great man to your friend,
Yeah.
and you just want to, like, you kind of want to be checked, but you just want to get out of emotion and a feeling.
Yeah.
You're just talking all kinds of junk, and they just rolling with it, and you're just like, nah, but and then you start pointing out all the great qualities he has because you feel the need to defend that person to your friend, when you think your friend at least is gonna give you a slap in the back of your head and be like, listen, you're doing the wrong thing, like, step up.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, you go home and it's like, yeah, she is like that, and you're like, dag, she's been incredible to me, and I kind of want to say what I want to say, knowing that it's not the truth, and I kind of want you to hold me accountable, but you just went with the flow. So now you can find yourself, explaining them who your friend is and how incredible they are and how wrong you are. Yeah, so it does get to that place where it is funny that you wind up, correcting your own behavior, and then you do look at the friendships, and you're like, damn, I really think it might not be as close. We might not be as close as we thought we were.
But it also creates a divide as well, right? So if I started out venting about you, and then now I'm like, well, no, he's this, that, and third. Is just this one instance that he did X, Y, and Z, then most people are less inclined to have that same conversation again. They're not gonna. I won't be complaining about you because they don't get it. It's like they're just looking at the negative, and you not the positive. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And the same like with if you're going home complaining about the friend, and it's easy for him or her to jump on the bandwagon of negativity of like, yeah, I always knew she was blah 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 blah. And you're like, hold up, wait a minute, like, what are you talking about? Like, she's this kind of, you know what I mean? And then what you do is you just don't talk about the person to the other person. So it creates a divide as well. So when things are not aligned, when you are multiple different people, when you're different people with the people that you're around, it creates a divide. And that also, you know, it starts with the standards and the standards, the things that you believe in. Because if you believe in one thing with one group of people and another thing with another group of people, and you always keep them separate, then yeah, you're not going to hold each of them to the same standard anyway.
Personally, ain't going to have standards, because there's no way you have standards in two separate groups. There's no way you have one set of standards and you just flowing in and out of two different groups. You don't even know who you are anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So overall, that's like, are your standards, you know, the question we need to ask ourselves is, are we filtering through our friends and our spouse, or are our standards filtering our spouses and friends? You know what I mean? Like, are we allowing our spouse and our friends to dictate our standards, or are we picking our friends and spouses based on our standards? You know, and we should be picking them based on our standards, because overall, we're not going to feel like we have a sense of self. We're not going to recognize ourselves if we don't maintain a sense of some standards, right? But the point is, I mean, I guess the whole point of it also is we can learn standards from our spouse and our friends.
We can.
But the point is, it's about learning, having the back and forth, being unafraid to have the back and forth. When the person, you know, like breaks it down to you and y'all in agreement, then yeah, then you now say, this is my standard. But you have to have the framework and the foundation of saying, once I have a standard though, it's going to take a whole argument or a whole breakdown or somebody being accurate for it to be changed. So you got to go in with a set belief. And yeah, you realize anybody you commit to that doesn't have set standards, 9 times out of 10, the relationship is going to be a lot of drama, and it's going to go awry, and you're going to go through a lot of turmoil. And if you was taught that that's what true love is, and you built for war and you built for the battle, then you was given the wrong idea. You fight for your country when you're built for the battle. Come home to a relationship, you're coming home to comfort. You're coming home to a commitment. You're coming home to somebody who reinforces you when you're doing something positive, and they discourage you when you're doing something negative. So it can't be all about your emotions. It has to be about the standards y'all agree to.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you guys don't argue.
Yeah. I mean, you should argue.
And it doesn't mean that you guys don't disagree. Yeah, and it doesn't mean that you guys don't disagree. It just means that because you guys have so many things in common, your core values are the same or very similar, that the arguments are a lot more solution driven. Like it's easier to resolve them when you are with like-minded people than it is with people that are not like-minded. So I think, you know, people have this idea of, you know, they want peace within the relationship and they think arguing shouldn't be a part of that equation, or disagreement, like, you know, that they shouldn't have to deal with that. But no two people are ever going to agree all the time. So how are you going to come to some type of agreement? And arguing doesn't mean that you're like cursing each other out and yelling. I mean, sometimes it can get to this passionate place, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. I mean, two people that disagree in this argument. So, you know, you're not on the same page. So I think that, you know, people should stop saying that, you know, argument, like, or running from arguing, or running from disagreeing, or running from conflict in general, because it leaves people on two separate sides of the situation, and it just causes it just adds on to the problem and causes more problems.
Definitely.
And when you dig yourself so deep in the hole, it's really hard to get out of it, because you didn't want to have that initial argument. So it breeds resentment.
Yeah, and we're not telling people to be contrarians, like where they're just building controversies just to show that they have a separate opinion, or they have they're separated. We're talking about coming together. So like arguing to have an agreement when you disagree. Like there's so much you're gonna disagree about when you're early in your relationships. There's so many things you're gonna disagree about when you add a new child to your relationship, or you add a new friend to your relationship. Like everybody has to filter through the fundamentals. Everybody got to filter through the foundation of each relationship. So if you already have set friends, you already have a set spouse, and you add anybody, whether it's a kid, whether, you know, you get back in touch with a family member, whether it's a new friend, they have to go through the ropes of kind of getting along with your foundation, and kind of getting to know your foundation, and kind of getting ingrained and having the same standards as everybody in your foundations, because nobody wants a virus within their system. You know what I mean? Because it breaks down the whole system. So we're never going to promote somebody arguing just to show that they are valid or to show that they have their own mind. We're talking about you're going to argue because it's a natural thing to not agree on everything, but it's how you actually debate. If you're debating towards progression, or are you debating for validation and peace and just to feel like you have your own mind or your own being? Because obviously you're committing so you could come together as one and y'all can walk through life together. So the whole point is to agree so you can walk the same path. And without our standards, the agreements would be a lot harder because we don't know what each other stands for. We should go into every argument understanding who we're speaking with, understanding the standards of the person we're speaking with, understanding the do's and don'ts of the person we're speaking with, so we can get a full understanding of where we're going. Because if I think Jerry's out to get me, we're not going anywhere. As soon as we start arguing, we're not going anywhere, right? But if I already believe that, okay, Jerry believes what she believes wholeheartedly, I just think she's wrong. She's like, and she believes I believe what I believe wholeheartedly, and she just thinks I'm wrong. Now we're searching for where can we meet and where can we find common ground? And that's always going to be filtered through our standards. Because then I can just disrespect you. Then I can just overtalk you. Then I can just, disregard you because I lack standard. I lack those standards. Our relationship lacks those standards. But if we have those standards, we're like, okay, she does have sense. She might not, there's times I'm looking at you and like, yo, she don't have no sense when it comes to this.
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, you don't make no sense, but you have sense. So I know when you're not making sense, you're in over your head because it's not the norm. It's not a normal practice, or else we wouldn't be cool. Or cool, we wouldn't be family, beyond family, right? Friends.
Are you finished?
Yeah. I mean, whether I know you ain't saying, am I finished?
No, because you're like we're friends, family. I don't know, we're cousins. What the
Yeah.
Like, you just went down this whole thing of
because how we just so used to saying family, and I committed the cardinal sin. Family is not more important than people you choose. So we're greater than family. We're friends. So I wanted that to be clear because it was a slip. It's a slip of upbringing.
Got it.
What I mean? Just staring in the camera for.
I know we're used to having we got used to having guests and talking to other people that it is different. Actually.
Yeah, I mean, but overall, the idea that we want everybody to take away from this is standards are a very important thing. Standards are what allow us to be who we are. So when you say, I am who I am, and when you say, I know who I am, and when you say, you don't know who I am, it's all filtered through your standards. But if a person clearly understands your standards, they know who you are. They know where you're coming from. They know all these things, and they're just trying to make sure you don't lose track of who you are. They're just trying to make sure they don't lose track of who you are, because everything should be filtered through your standards. Who you are and who make you who you are is your standards.
And they should transfer over. You brought up a good point about how sometimes your standards may change based on the people that you meet, right? So you meet a person, and you may learn a thing or two about some things. Yeah, they may inspire you, and you're like, you know what, that actually makes sense. I'm going to move forward with that. But what people do is they move forward with it, but they don't let the people around them know that they move forward with this new standard, or this new way of thinking. So and then
they go against the standard.
Yeah, and then when there's a disconnect in their other relationships, they don't seem to understand why. But they never said, "Hey, I changed," right? Because I learned this new information. I decided to adopt it. I wanted to move forward in this way, and this is what change. This is what the changes are, right? But instead, the friends are thinking, she meets this new man, or she meets this new friend, and now she's different. I don't even know who she is anymore. And they're resenting the person that changed, that enlightened you, right? And you're like the victim because they still want their old friend back. So they're not looking at you like you made a choice either, because you didn't say anything. So you didn't say anything. You adopted these changes in your life, and they're looking at the person that enlightened you as the enemy, but it's really you, because you didn't have the conversation. You didn't say, you know what. The example I'm going to use is like, you know what, I decided I'm no longer going to eat meat anymore. Like I was talking to Aziz, and he did some research, and the things that he brought to my attention made sense, so I'm no longer going to eat meat anymore. And instead of them looking at it like, you know, Jerry made a choice that she's not going to eat meat, they're like, that damn Aziz. You know, ever since she met Aziz, she became a vegan. You know what I mean? Like,
But
instead of taking full
a lifestyle
responsibility.
change.
But
That would be more of a lifestyle change.
But would a standard be lifestyle? Like,
the standard was if somebody makes perfect sense, I'm going to adapt it. That would be the standard. So when you're talking to somebody, you're like, if anytime you make perfect sense, I'm not going to just agree with you. I'm going to apply it to my life. That's a standard. You get what I'm saying? So the standard in that case would be, yeah, I know that if somebody makes perfect sense, that I'm going to adapt it. So we had,
but wouldn't that be? But that's an example of that, though.
Yeah, that would be the example. But I wanted to make clear the standard is the fact that you are clear on that you were eating meat and you was a big meat eater. And I mean, that sounds a little strange. That sounds a little strange, but you were a meat eater and then you decided to not eat meat anymore based on the fact that you got new information. But I think your friends should recognize you because they're like, okay, if she gets new information, typically you have to have something to refer back to.
Yes, but your friends should recognize. Your friends should recognize you. But it's my responsibility. It shouldn't be that we're all, me and my friends are out to dinner, and I'm like, oh, and I'm looking at the menu and I'm getting a salad or I'm avoiding meat, right? I'm not ordering meat. Like usually we go out, we all share appetizers, whatever. I'm like, oh, I'm not eating that anymore. And they're like, since when? You know what I mean? Like they shouldn't find out. Like I should have been able to say, you know what, I got this information. And now I decided to apply it to my life. So going forward, I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z.
But
you know what I mean? Like, I think that
because it's not going to affect them. Like, you're not telling them.
But come on, Aziz, you felt some type of way when I really stopped eating meat.
No, what I'm saying is it's not going to affect them to the point where the friendship is done.
No, it's not the friendship is not over, but we connect on, we connect on people, well, we
connected on food. But you're missing the point. I'm saying it's a lifestyle change. Yeah, the lifestyle change affects the person. So yeah, you should keep them abreast on what you talked about, what y'all had the discussion on, what you agreed upon, definitely. But when we're talking about standards, we're talking about the idea that, let's say you was a person that's like, I never thought my standard was if I learn new information, I'll change my mind. You never really thought that. Did we lose you?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what the hell happened.
Let's say you never really thought that I'll change my mind on certain things based on my standards. You never thought that would particularly be a standard. And now your friends are so used to you like, well, I'm sticking to this no matter what. I'm sticking to this no matter what. And you realizing that was a standard of yours. Like, I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to be who I'm going to be. And this is who I am, regardless. And then a person says, why would you limit yourself to being just that when we had a whole meat discussion? We had all of these types of discussions. And if you got new information, we sat here and battled it out. We looked things up. We researched. We had the back and forth. And at the end of the discussion, we came to agreement. Why don't you have the capacity or the ability to actually take in that information? Because your standards are, I'm going to stick to who I am one way or another. So they're like, why who you are can't be a person who actually takes information and makes the adjustment. And then you're like, oh, okay, I can see that. So now you change your standard. So your friends is like, oh, so they're not thinking, why did you stop eating meat when we're talking about standard? Because that's a lifestyle change. They're thinking, oh, so now this guy gets you to, or this person gets you to stop eating meat. I thought you was saying you didn't care, you're a meat eater, and that's just what it is. And you like, no, I restructured my whole standard. So now I owe half of y'all apology for sticking to something and sticking to my guns on things that weren't good. They weren't necessarily healthy. And my mentality had to shift. So I adapted a new standard. So that's what I was saying. You was giving an example of a lifestyle change. So I just wanted to be clear on what the standard was within that lifestyle change.
I got it.
Because in that standard, you have to have the ability to take in information.
So in order for me to make the adjustment, I had the way that my idea or my belief on how I take it or adopt new information has to be the benchmark, and then
everything else is smooth because now your friends can hold you to that standards.
But don't you think it gets
standards can't be necessary as easy as a lifestyle change? It's a whole faith change.
Yeah. So then that's my question for you. Like, doesn't it get a little hairy? Like we talked about in our last Let's Talk relationship, right?
Definitely.
The difference between growth and nurturing,
Mhm.
right? And how people like, I want to be with somebody that I can grow with, but it's really you should be with somebody that's an equal who could nurture you and you're nurturing them, right?
Definitely.
And wouldn't that if the standard is if the information makes sense, I'm gonna apply it, right?
Definitely.
Wouldn't there be some parameters behind that? Because that means that you're forever evolving. Like if you can be around a whole bunch of people and they could give you information that makes sense, but that doesn't mean that you're necessarily gonna apply everything.
No, you apply anything you agree with.
But you can agree with it, like you
But
can agree.
why would you ever? At what point would you ever not apply something you agree with?
So you don't truly agree. So I was like, let's use your example of shrimp, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Aziz doesn't eat pork. He hasn't eaten pork his whole entire life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he eats shrimp, and shrimp are disgusting. The bottom feeders. They eat crap. Everyone knows about shrimp, right? They're scavengers.
That's the whole lesson. We don't need to.
So basically, we had the conversation about you don't eat pork. You don't eat pork, but yet you eat shrimp.
Uh-huh.
Like, and I get it. He never ate pork a day in his life. So yeah, to eat pork now is like okay. But I was like, but they're just as disgusting, right?
Definitely.
So probably even worse. But the point, like, so you said that I gave you that information, right? You thought about it, and you still eat shrimp. You agreed, but you still eat it.
No, but
as often.
What was the agreement?
That you eat shrimp.
Because my standard didn't change. It's like there's no point in me going back and eating meat.
I agree. You wouldn't eat the pork.
But I eat shrimp. So what I'm going to do is create a stronger lifestyle, maintain the shrimp because I enjoy it for quality of life, but not overindulge in shrimp.
But that would be a situation where you agreed. Hold on, but you agreed. You agreed with the.
I agreed that shrimp can be equivalent to pork, right? I agree with that, right? That would be. I'm saying I agree with you on that, right? So what's the practice is what we agreed to was I'm going to eat shrimp once a month, the most, right?
Yes.
So that's the agreement. So one thing you knew with my standards is within my standards, once you proved your point, I was going to agree with you, and then we was going to come to agreement with how we was going to move going forward. So you still enlightened me. I still agreed with your information, and I made a informed decision based on that information. I'm saying with your friends, they don't even know you stop eating meat in your example. So you didn't even come to agreement with your friends on how everything's going to work from going forward. You get what I'm saying? So that's what the standard is. The standard is bringing them up to speed on the agreement based on the discussion.
I understood all of that, but the reason why I brought the shrimp comment up was based on your comment that you said that if you don't agree with it, then
if you agree with it, then you will make the adjustments. You apply it. And that's what I did. I applied it. I said, due to quality of life, because I enjoy shrimp, I'll still eat shrimp. There's no point in me trying pork because I never ate it. So there's no point in me going backwards. But because I've already ate shrimp and I'm already a shrimp eater and I already enjoy shrimp, there's no point in me, the person, like continuously eating a bunch of shrimp. That's not good for me. But at the same time, I could eat it in moderation. So we came up with a different agreement. You're like, yeah, I can see that. We agreed.
So yeah, so sometimes I do often have the all or nothing mentality.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But it is all or nothing. It's just the agreement.
Well, but what I'm saying is that you would have told me that about, huh?
Just quit shrimp.
Yeah, I don't eat shrimp.
No, you would have just quit shrimp.
Yeah, I would have just quit, yeah.
But you're not that way in every aspect of your life. So that obviously shrimp didn't have as much value as other things.
Yeah, no, it didn't.
So that's what I'm saying. Obviously, I weighed it out. I thought of quality of life. I'm like, okay, I do enjoy shrimp. So if I want to eat shrimp, I should. You know what I mean? I haven't ate it in about, 6 months now. Maybe 6, 7 months.
We hardly ever.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, I left the door open because I understand that I enjoy it. So I can eat it in moderation, right? Just like I stopped drinking. It wasn't that important to me. But I still eat sugar, and it's not as healthy, right? But I'm gonna now say I'm gonna eat sugar in moderation for quality of life. because we're always battling with quality of life and health. That's the constant.
So that was the whole point of me bringing up these examples and asking that question, because like you said, it's if you're always searching for things, then how are you really truly connecting with people, and how are you truly establishing strong relationships, right? So if I'm always open to like, and it like, again, we live in a world where we can get information on the fly. So there's tons of information out there, right? And you have to kind of sift through the things that, sift through things and apply it and then keep it moving, right? You can't really, it's a lot of information. It's like overkill, right? And so I asked you that question because, yeah, it's important for you to come into a place where you understand what you want, you know what your deal breakers are, you know what your standards are, right? But you're still open. You don't know everything, right? We don't know everything, right? So we are gonna maybe meet a person who's gonna bring something to our attention that we didn't know, and we're like, that actually makes sense. Let me apply it. But that's not with everybody either. You know what I mean? Like, and you see, we've been around people, right? Where it's like they get every new information. They're like, well, I'm gonna apply that. Like, you have to turn it off at some point, right? But not be, but not be closed-minded. It's.
They can't apply everything. One thing, being closed-minded just means that you agree. You don't agree, you don't agree. Being bullheaded means that you disagree with something that is actual.
Okay.
So I agree with your comment, right? And then I made the adjustment. That's applying it. So it still showed I applied it, but I still maintained quality of life, my quality of life. And you were like, okay, I can see that. So we came to agreement. So we were able to move forward. So when you're talking about a bunch of people just getting a bunch of information, but we're talking about standards.
Okay.
Our ability to have standards. The standard is my ability to take in the information you're giving me, find the solution, see if it's actual or it's factual, and factual is actual, which is factual, is actual or is fiction, and figure it out. And then based on that, once we find out it's factual, we got to make decisions based on that. That's going to be best for the whole. But that's a standard. The standard is your ability to want to progress and want to move as one unit. That's the standard. So if you meet a person, they're like, listen, I only want to move as one unit. So I want to be transparent. That's a standard. So when somebody points out where they weren't transparent, it's filtering through their standard. So they brought something new to their attention, but it still was filtered through their standard because they do want to be transparent. Just like I don't want to be ignorant. So once I got information, I want to be able to apply it. But at the same time, I want to be able to have a quality of life through knowing what that information is. There's a lot of people that disregard the information.
Yeah.
So we're talking about standards. We're not talking about like, and I get what you're saying. You don't want to give the message where we're always evolving, we're always growing, and the person is a nomad versus when are they actually building and committing
and connecting
building a house instead of moving from place to place. And yeah, that would be a deal breaker for you and I.
Yeah.
Right? But that doesn't mean when information is given through our relationship, because you're a person in my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, you cut it off with certain people because you're like, okay, I'm not really interested in how
they're living what they're doing,
the coronavirus, or to get a vaccine for the coronavirus. That's a scientist. I'm not interested. I'm interested in when the cure comes out, in taking the cure, right? Or the vaccine, excuse me, not the cure, but the vaccine.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, that's where it stops for me. I'm not going out and trying to get more information based on that. Why? Because I want to master all the things that I'm great at. I want to master all the things that's going to bring my connections closer together. And with time and effort, I'm choosing where to prioritize my time and effort. That's also a standard. Who's your pro?
Well, yeah, and you're right about that. I think that because we live in a world where information is so easy to obtain and
easily accessible.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's easy is accessible, and depending on what marketing team is behind what company, their stuff is filtered. You Google it and it's like the first 5 things you see. Like information is not. It's just because you see it first doesn't mean that it's right. So you realize that too, like when you are searching for things, or when you're looking for that validation, or you're looking for extra information.
Or you're searching for people. The first 5 people might not be
Yeah,
the right
you
people.
have to realize that,
Don't
because
get
you have to.
discouraged and keep searching until you get the information or find the people that best suit you based on what your
Your
standard.
standards. Yeah, but it's really important. It's really, you need to be mindful of that. Like you, sometimes you're not even realizing that. Like when I changed the way that I was eating, I was doing a lot of research, and it was a ton of information, a lot of things that made sense at the time or contradicted another thing. So you have to make a choice, right, based on quality of life, because there's a ton of things. There's 10 things telling you yes. There's 10 things telling you no. What do you want to do, right? Like you have to make.
When we're talking about thinking for ourselves, and we give people clear, and we're on our Let's Talk relationships, we're thinking, telling people basically, or when we're building with people, we're telling them, listen, thinking for yourself just means your ability to assess the information coming in.
Yeah.
Make an informed decision based on information coming in. So I can see a blogger that I really don't understand their credentials, know their credentials, read their material, and without having a bunch of like facts to back it up, I can actually filter it in and say, okay, that makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they don't have the credentials, like I can see that it makes sense.
Yeah.
So thinking for yourself is also using the tools you have within your mindset, within your experiences, and not always just through education and research.
Yeah, it's also people, like it's also about connecting with and living life and connecting.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get a ton of lessons by just connecting. You get a ton of lessons by having the conversation, right? So it goes beyond Googling something. It's really paying attention to your surroundings, paying attention to yourself, paying attention to other people, paying attention to your relationships. And most of the time, the answers are there.
Definitely.
Like you don't have to go far.
And a lot of people go straight to Google. What do we always talk about? What do I always explain to y'all? No, let's filter through our standards first.
And then go to Google.
We had a stalemate after 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Then we're going to go to Google, take care of it, and, get a mediator. But at first, we have to be able to solve things in real time without picking up our phones. And that takes having independent thought in that regard. That takes using the information you have provided and trusting yourself that you have the information. Because to start the argument and start the debate, you got to feel you have some form of information.
Yeah.
Because we both opened our mouths, so we both disagreed, and we both feel we have the information, so we have to teach. And based on teaching, if we're both open to hear what each other has to say, which should be a standard, right? That should be the standard of having any discussion. We both very open to hearing what the other person has to say, or we both understand who we're speaking with. So if you're well-versed, you probably have the floor. If I'm well-versed, I probably have more of the floor, right? So it's based on the arena we are challenging each other in. But at the end of the day, that they're both standards, track record and being open to listen to what the other person is saying and open to speak, right? So those are standards that govern our actual interaction, regardless of what's the topic.
Yeah.
We don't go outside of that standard, because then it gets into a disrespectful place. Then it gets into an unhealthy place. Then it starts to chip away at the relationship as a whole, right?
Yeah. Agreed.
So, I mean, we don't need to keep on going and going and going, but we need to explain. We need to explain to people, like, your standards are everything. Your standards should be your identifier. It should be how people identify you. And if everybody doesn't know you for your standards, then you haven't been as transparent and as honest with yourself, and you haven't been as honest with the people around you.
Yeah.
You also have a clear understanding of your standards. That's what makes you who you are.
And you're not really creating a solid foundation in terms of any relationship that you're with if no one knows what you stand for.
Definitely. So this has been another eventful discussion on the Accountable Love podcast. My name's Aziz.
I'm Jerry.
And this is Accountable Love.
Peace.